That's really a perfect segue to our next speaker, Kasar Abdulla, who came here as a child, has really helped to build our community in fundamental ways. She was the co-founder of the American Muslim Advisory Council of Tennessee. She was recipient of President Obama's Champion of Change Award, and she's a leader in our Kurdish American community, which is well established here in Middle Tennessee. Kasar.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me, or should I? All right. This is a really powerful panel. Stories are personal. Stories are difficult. Oftentimes, it's a challenge to actually share. But I would like to share a piece about my story. So I ask you to go on this journey with me. It's 1988. I was about 6 years old, a typical average, 6-year-old girl. It was a very, very exciting year for me. It was the first year I'll be attending school. I spent most of my time with my grandmother, actually, in the village of Bigdaud in Kurdistan of Iraq. She used to go and pray and meditate next to waterfalls, and I really just wanted to go, not to pray, but to pick blueberries and raspberries and all the berries you can actually think of. And I remember going, that was the everyday routine. And one day we leave that routine and we're headed home. And just overnight, that world of mine changed. That dream of going to school shattered. That dream of picking berries with my grandmother was no longer there. It was early in the morning at the crack of dawn where we hear a huge loud noise knocking at the front door. It was a Kurdish Peshmerga freedom fighter screaming on top of his lungs and saying, "If you want to live, you must leave." And at that time, it was just my mother who was pregnant and about 4 of us with my grandmother. She looked at us and said, "Don't worry. Do not be scared. This is temporary." She said, "We're going to go to the mountains and hide. And as soon as the smoke and the airplanes and the helicopters disappear, we're coming back home." And poor me, I believed her. I was ready to walk. I was ready to run and go hide. My sisters and I actually put on a challenge to see who's going to get to the mountain faster. But we could tell and we could sense the feelings and emotions inside my mother's heart that she was hiding something from us. And so we struggled for days and nights, crossing the mountain that actually divides Kurdistan of Iraq and Kurdistan of Turkey into 2 distinctive parts. I remember very well, vividly, the Ba'ath army that was led by Saddam Hussein catching up behind us, and then in front of us being faced with the Turkish army that was not about to allow us to enter. So we had no place to go. What could a 6-year-old really think? I remember crying to my mother and saying, "You didn't tell me the truth, Mom. You said we're going back home, but we keep walking and walking. I'm hungry. I'm tired." And she keeps saying, "I promise you, soon this will be over." It wasn't until finally, with the negotiation process of United Nations and a lot of other countries, that Turkey allowed the thousands and thousands of Kurdish folks to actually settle in Kurdistan itself. And so I lived under a tent, the early childhood life, the elementary phase where I should be studying ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. I had to learn to protect myself from armed soldiers surrounding me with barbed wires. What did I do to deserve this? I took my anger and frustration out of my mother. In that phase, we are born with the curiosity of asking why. We are born with the curiosity to innovate, with the drive to learn. These were the three things that really kept my life, my spirit, my soul alive. I remember beginning to create my own toys out of sticks and trash. I remember practicing the Kurdish letters on the sand with a stick. I remember my mother begging the civic leader in the camp to teach me Kurdish, just to teach me and my siblings to keep us busy because we did not know how much longer we would be there. And then in 1992, so 4 years later, we received the news. News that, was both pleasant but also very, very fearful. We were full of fears. We were chosen. We were the lucky ones that were going to be settled in North Dakota. So this idea of going to the United States was a dream come true for many reasons. We wanted an opportunity to live, just to be human beings. On the other side, my mother and the rest of us, we were terrified to go into an unknown world, a piece of world that we have no idea whether, one, we will be accepted, two, whether we will really be able to survive and integrate. But we had no choice. The choices were stay in the camp, possibly face death again because you're in the hands of another enemy, or travel deep and far away to an unknown part of the world. And there is a possibility of surviving. And again, I remember being on the journey in the airplane to United States, my mother telling me all the wonderful and great things about United States. In my dream, like the classical immigrant dream, that a United States is utopia, that it is paradise on earth, that it is the special place that you could be what you want to be, regardless of who you are, regardless of what you practice, that you will have a dream to be a human being. And I remember stepping out of the plane in Fargo, North Dakota, and going inside the airport, being surrounded by people, curious eyes. Some of them, their hearts were filled with love and compassion. Others, you could tell it was hate. There were individuals. I want to speak of one person, one lady who had the biggest impact on me. Her name was Eileen. Eileen was part of the Lutheran Refugee Services. She was there to welcome us. She was there, like Abdulla, to actually help us integrate into the society. And I remember she looked at me, and my heart just connected with her because she genuinely was a kind woman. She handed over a stuffed animal, though I was not really interested in the stuffed animal. What I really was craving and needing was love. She smiled as she approached me, and when she smiled, she dissolved the fears within me. The rest of the airport became warm. That feeling I will never forget. And so as refugees settle, we go through various phases in our life. So Fargo, North Dakota was quite tough. Even the temperature was very, very difficult for us. We could not bear the freezing temperature. We never thought that a temperature like North Dakota would really exist on Earth. We would be covered in snowsuits, head to toe, even our eyes covered, and we're walking to the school. And I remember the initial phases were very, very difficult. My parents, again, thinking about what in the world are we doing here? How are we going to survive? Both of them were agricultural farmers. There wasn't much farming they could do in North Dakota. There wasn't much labor opportunities, job opportunities for them to do. Unfortunately, the way we welcomed my father was actually start billing him for the airline tickets that brought us to the United States. Some say that's the great way of teaching refugees a lesson in the United States. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But we never think about what if those boots don't have straps. And it wasn't until 2 years ago my father finally paid off all the airline tickets for his children. Within 6 months, the refugee service programs actually ended. Within 6 months, my parents had to get a job. My father ended up becoming a janitor at a church. That was his way of giving back to the church that settled us. My mother ended up cleaning hotels and other businesses. Both of them working. North Dakota was tough in many ways. And so in 1996, my family decided to come and visit Nashville, Tennessee. They fell in love with it for many reasons. The beautiful valleys and the trees and the agricultural state and environment reminded them of Kurdistan. But in addition, they found other people who looked like them, sounded like them. This whole nature and value of volunteerism and community really existed in Tennessee that we resonated with. And so we stayed here. My high school, post-high school, undergraduate and graduate level have been in Nashville, Tennessee. Even though there are more than 41 hate groups in Tennessee, quite honestly, there's no other place I would be but Tennessee. I never ever thought I was driven out of Kurdistan and settled in Fargo. I did not choose to come to the United States, but I chose to come to Tennessee. And I chose out of 50 states to make Nashville, Tennessee my home because of the wonderful people like you in this audience. My college professors had a huge impact in who I am today. Some are in this audience. I will never forget how some of my professors looked at me as a human being. And they used their mind and their heart to understand who I am, where I'm coming from. And they have been my mentors throughout the years. I may look young to you, but I'm 32 years old. The hijab comes in handy to hide the gray hairs. And so because of the community, because the teachers, I have become who I am today. I'm a firm believer, as the previous professor talked about, democracy is ever changing, right? But have we ever questioned why aren't our institutions ever evolving the same way we as human beings are evolving? I remember being very interested to study about human behavior and culture, so I changed my major from biology to sociology. I shattered my father's dreams of me being a doctor. It was painful for him to hear. He still has a hard time sometimes just looking at me and saying, "You're not the doctor I thought you'd be." And I remember studying sociology, and I recognized this is a university. And there was so much lack of information in the department that was missing. Sociology stuff, you would think it would be world. You would think it would expose scholars and students to have lens to see from the global perspective. It was actually missing quite a lot of pieces. The only one piece I feel like I did receive, which partly I think because I attended a historically black university, was I did learn a whole lot about African American movement here in the United States and some of the movement about women. Though, even as up today, I feel like I missed the information about Native American. I oftentimes thought America was actually created by the founding fathers, not even the mothers. It took me a while to figure out there were, more people. And so I think the greater question is, as we create these institutions like education, which education, the institution has such a huge impact on our lives and the way we think. How competent is it for our century, our time, and the people? I remember being very shocked that people had no idea about Kurdistan. What do you mean? You don't know, you've never heard of Kurdistan. It really does exist. I remember my professor saying it doesn't exist. I'd have never heard of Kurdistan. You mean Pakistan, Afghanistan? And I said, no, really, it does exist. I am one. I am Kurdish. I came from Kurdistan. I know it exists, right? And so I just wanted to push us, if we are going to be educators. One is to know the type of influence we have on the younger population. Two is to be aware of our own biases that have been taught to us through nature. We're not born with it. And I'm not talking about being colorblind. There's no such thing as colorblind. If you don't see colors, you need to get your eyes checked. It is a beautiful thing to see colors and to be interested in colors. It is a beautiful thing to be curious about it, but it is not beautiful to be fearful of the changes that you see around you.